Welcome, everybody. My name's David Wood, and it's my pleasure and privilege to chair London Futurists. Take back tomorrow. That's the headline for today's webinar. I think it's an excellent rallying call. The person who has promoted that fine phrase is today's lead speaker, Gerd Leonhard. Gerd isn't just a prominent futurist and an excellent filmmaker, he also has a marvelous way with words, as you will see. Another phrase that Gerd has recently been highlighting is the bad future. Along with Take Back Tomorrow and the fork in the road, these are the themes of today's event. Mention of the bad future raises 4 questions, among others, which I'll expect we'll be discussing. First, some of you may wonder, is it really true that the future we're entering is a bad future? Second, if there are some truly bad aspects of where we seem to be heading, have we understood the true causes of these bad aspects? Because if we just focus on the symptoms without tackling the actual root causes, we're probably just going to make things worse. Third, what role can Europe play in changing humanity's trajectory away from that bad future to what Gerd has called the good future? Can Europe really make a difference in a world of mega superpowers and without any significant European big tech companies of our own? And fourth, the last of my opening questions, what about the rest of the world? Gerd is connecting today from Zurich, Switzerland, and I'm in London. And the third panelist is also European, Danish, in fact, the distinguished futurist Liselotte Lingso. As it happens, Liselotte is presently near Mombasa, Kenya, and will surely have something to say about what role African nations can play in taking back tomorrow. We'll hear from Liselotte shortly, but first I give the floor to Gerd. Take it away.
Thank you. So I'm going to activate my screen share. Are we cooking? Yeah, it's working?
It's good.
Okay, good. So I talked about the good future for almost 10 years now, since my last book, Technology versus Humanity. And I've been very much an optimist, and I still am. But I really think that we are at a fork in the road in 2026. And the fork in the road has been a theme of my work as well, already 15 years ago. But we're seeing a clear rise of what I call the bad future, right? We're seeing a rise of systems that are not what they should be. And now we have this clash, and I figured I should set up a website called thebadfuture.com that you can visit if you want some more darker aspects to be known. I also have, of course, the Good Future website, but let's focus on this for a minute. Just a word of disclaimer, advice. I use some AI tools to make this talk. It's still me talking to you here. It's not the AI, but I use Google Notebook LM, which is a fantastic tool to make some graphics and things like that. So also I want to say, my kids are Americans. I lived in America for 20 years. It's very much a second home or even a first home to me. So this speech is not anti-American. And also it's not just about Donald Trump and the current government. And we'll discuss that later, what that means. But first I'm going to give you some future shocks, staying in the history of Alvin Toffler here, to see what's happening at this very moment. I do think, to make the turn to the good future again, that protopia, which is a Kevin Kelly word, will actually replace the current dystopia. So protopia is a gradual, step-by-step, wise approach towards the good future. It's very much a theme from Kevin Kelly that you should check out in his book and his work, Protopia. Other great resources on the bottom of the page, if you want to really see what's happening with the United States, Jeffrey Sachs, Fareed Zakaria, Yuval Harari, all those people, take a good look at what they're doing. I think you'll find that to be quite interesting. So 3 things about the bad future that is currently important to know. First, of course, the new America, or I should say the new old America, because it's the opposite of the future, it's the past. Going back, destroying everything that we have achieved for a long time in a systematic fashion, the global world order, the trust in democracy. So we have a screaming orange guy bringing us short-termism, gunboat diplomacy, and all of those nice things. I have more on that in a minute. But on top of that, we have the rise of artificial general intelligence, promoted from companies like OpenAI and Microsoft to some degree, but also, of course, DeepSeek and Chinese companies, not just American companies. But that is the idea of creating an intelligence that is smarter than all humans combined, that can do 98% of what a human can do physically and intellectually. Elon Musk at the World Economic Forum just last week said that he expects general intelligence to arrive by the end of this year. Right? Of course, we should not really pay attention to Elon's timelines, but I think it's sooner than later, right? And the third one is climate change. We are sitting here and basically saying, okay, now we have urgent things to do, which is to make money. And the United States is saying that climate change is no longer an issue because they don't like it. So major problem here, those three things are all happening at the same time. So these are the headlines of what's happening. Geopolitical, and I love this new word from Fareed Zakaria, when he talks about geoeconomic reset, right? The logic of the world is changing. And those are good things and bad things at the same time. But now they're also being egged on what I call, and Demis Hassabis and Mustafa Sulaiman from Microsoft calls the intelligence revolution. And this is bigger than the Industrial Revolution. It's 100x or 1000x, right? Basically unlimited intelligence, abundant intelligence. And again, I think this could be heaven or it could be hell, but we're certainly going to need some wisdom to make that work. We can solve cancer, we can solve climate, we can solve water, food, spacefaring, yes. But we can also bring about other things that are not good. So we have exponential combinatorial science and tech leaps. It's truly mind-boggling. I'm super excited about this. If you see the list down here, renewable energy, AI, quantum computing, nuclear fusion, all the stuff that Lieselotte and me and other futurists talk about. If all that happens, it could be heaven. Right? We solve a lot of practical problems, right? But we need some wisdom, some guidance. We need to work together. And so the main thing here really is that, how do we keep that from having too many side effects? The Industrial Revolution brought us oil and gas, and we thought that was great. And then eventually we said, okay, there are side effects, but we choose to ignore it. And that has become a big deal. We can't do that with AI. Politically speaking, 2026 is the rise of the bad future in the shape of the current United States government. Anything that has been termed to be not good for us seems to be an agenda on the King Donald's item list. And not just Greenland and other, but pretty much everything from equality all the way down to gender, to political accomplishments. And this is a good picture I thought that Google Notebook has put together. Here's a great summary that makes me think of Blade Runner a little bit. So the bad future is power over purpose, technology over humanity, transactional politics over trust, strong man over collaboration. If that becomes the new normal, bottom line this, I'll throw it right at you. You can scream back at me later. The American future no longer exists. The idea that we're going to get the good future from Silicon Valley, from I wouldn't say the people themselves, but the establishment and the tech oligarchy together with the military and, of course, the government, right? It's safe to say the good future will no longer be made in America. That train is gone. What we're seeing right now is a combination of politics and technology that are, of course, coming together. When you see a gay California man, Tim Cook, coming to meet Donald Trump and giving him a platinum gold iPhone so that he won't be upset at Apple, then I think we've reached the end of the line here, never mind everything else that has happened. So the American future no longer exists. These are some quotes that should really scare the pants off you. You've probably seen them before. Trump says to the Minister of Norway, "I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace." What does that remind you of? I'm not going to say that, but it's scary shit, right? Then he says, "America started with AI and the race, and we will win it." And right next to that is, "I don't need international law." Right? And then he says on the right, "We will remember who voted against us when it's about Greenland," right? I mean, it's just okay. So we've seen all that before, but the result is on the lower right is people want to start boycotting the United States like they boycotted South Africa. Not going to the World Cup as an athlete or as a visitor, not going at all. That seems like a distinct option now. I'm not promoting this. I'm just pointing out the reaction that people have to this onslaught of what we're seeing. So governments, basically, by power, the anatomies of a bad future, diplomacy, institutions, trying to kill the UN. The peace board is nothing but the attempt of Trump to take away the power of the UN and replace it with his own oligarchy. Right? So all that stuff doesn't bode very well. The worst part is that when democracy is on its way out, like it is now in these conversations and diplomacy, then war becomes an option, a real option. Right? Now, that's some scary stuff. That's even without AI playing a part in it. Just look at Iran and everything that's happening. War becomes thinkable again. That is a nasty surprise. The leader of the free world has abandoned the good future. Obama, while not having achieved many good things that he wanted to, certainly would be considered to be part of the good future, at least ideally speaking, right? Even though many people would argue that as well. But now we have abandoned this, when the United States is dysfunctional. On top of that, AGI is also about power. Now you have people in the US talking about creating a Manhattan Project for AI, right? I mean, this is ludicrous to the utmost. We know what happened with the Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer did not want to start a war or throw the bomb. He wanted to throw it out the ocean, right? But the government decided, hey, we're going to show it off, right? So if that happens with AI, we are toast. We cannot allow that to happen. Clearly a big deal, because AGI is also not about permanent unemployment and technological unemployment, but about mass diminishment. Is the idea that saying, we're going to lose our identity, our purpose, our agency, right? Because we have AI that does everything for us. That's already happening when people use ChatGPT and they outsource their cognition, right? Cut and paste and send a letter to your wife that you're getting divorced. Right? People are doing that, yeah? 30% of ChatGPT and Gemini users and so on use it for personal therapy. I mean, this is madness, right? Mass diminishment was a great term that actually Google Notebook came up with, so I can't take credit for it, right? I love this thing that was generated there. It's kind of, we're going to become barcodes. That's what we are, right? Organisms are algorithms, right? Remember that? The war cry of Silicon Valley. So here's my bottom line of this. AI didn't become evil because there were evil people doing it, or evil money people, or even VCs, right? It became normal. It's part of everything now. And the pitch that we're seeing is like, automation is liberation, right? So when everything gets automated, we're set free to do other things. I mean, the irony, behold, this is like George Orwell pure, right? It's a repetition. Rather than focusing on what makes good things about AI, which is cognification, augmentation, all of those great things that we can talk about, right? We choose to automate ourselves and get away with it. So my summary of that is technology didn't fail, really. Well, there were some failures, but governance failed completely. Right? We lost the narrative. We were looking at short-term profit. And, when OpenAI goes public with the IPO, and Anthropic as well, we'll have probably 2 multi-trillion-dollar IPOs, right? Who is that good for? Right? What actually is this good for? Right? It's good for the markets. The markets are 20 years behind the curve on what really matters to us, right? GDP, Kennedy, you heard that quote. That's basically, if we don't go away from this game of profit and growth and power, whether it's Trump, the military, economics, tariffs, right, or AI, we're not going to live to be around the 2050, right? We need to shift this paradigm to the paradigm of the UN of 20 years ago, right? The Sustainable Development Goals, but I call it people, planet, purpose, peace, and prosperity. That should be the paradigm of the stock market. You get rewarded if you tick those boxes, some more than others in different times, but you can't just tick one box. You tick one box, you tick it until it's just all over, right? We need 5 boxes. To pay a dividend, you got to perform all the 5 boxes. Not all at 10, of course, but different levels. So here's our choice with Europe. We need to disengage from the bad future. And if the bad future is embodied by the US, not just Trump, but by what we're seeing, then so be it. Right? If that's what it is, then if you can't be neutral, I live in Switzerland, right? Neutrality is complicity. We've heard that before, right? Remember that? Fascism? Right? To be neutral, to say nothing, that is compliant. And we can safely say we haven't done that. We didn't resist. We just click accept and move on. And now the Germans are trying to, make Trump feel like, he's not doing what he's doing. I mean, the whole debate about Greenland, Denmark, we'll talk about that. But we must reject this trajectory of the bad future. And reject means we don't take part, right? It means all kinds of things that I will outline in my summary later. So you see here, disengage and lead, right? Maybe we should boycott the FIFA World Cup completely. Maybe we should switch to European platform providers. Here's the list. It will be extremely difficult. 98% of everything that we do is hosted not here, right? It's US stuff. And we're not going to switch to Chinese software solutions, right? So, this is forcing Europe to come together or to go away and to wilt, right? And that's a good thing. But man, this is going to be difficult, right? Think about the European Commission. What Europe is known for is complacency, laziness, and bureaucracy. And I'm always defending Europe. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but we're still humans. That's a good thing. So, number one, we must make human-centered AI a strategic advantage. We're not going to build AI that will replace everyone, that will do everything better than everybody else. We're going to use it to enhance human judgment. It's a tool. It's a power tool. It will have eventually some sort of agency, right? But regulation alone won't do that. We have to have real leadership. If you're looking back at Europe the last 20 years, where are the leaders? Where are the people from the 60s and 70s, like Willy Brandt or Dag Hammarskjöld from the UN? People like that, right? Where are they now? And it's like they got to come back some way or the other. Okay, sovereignty. We need to build sovereignty for our IT systems, our cloud storage, our military. Maybe we shouldn't be sharing all that data with the NSA anymore. Even though, of course, that's a two-way street, right? So big question there, right? Strategic autonomy. We got to build that. We have to invest this. And for that, we have to become the United States of Europe. Because otherwise, there's no business model there. If Proton Mail is going to sell to Swiss people that need a secure cloud service, that's great. But we're going to need it for 800 million Europeans. It can't be done in just one place. We have to invest in what are called algorithms. That's about education. Algorithms are all the things that machines don't do. Algorithms are things like compassion, empathy, understanding, emotions, creativity, design, negotiation, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, all the weird stuff that machines don't do. Okay? And that is just utterly in bad shape today in today's education. Our kids are learning stuff that like 20 years ago, to download information for later. What is that going to do when you have all the world's information at instant right here? Right? And you can tell your wristwatch to make a summary about the future of Switzerland and then have a bot speak about it. Yeah. It is about our empathy and about our humanness that will make the difference. We have to learn that. Right? So a new global alliance of trust. I think this alliance will not include the US for quite some time. Unless things dramatically change. There might be another American Revolution, as I point out on my page, The Bad Future, a kind of civil war or civil unrest, hopefully not a war. That may happen, but different story. We need to figure out how we can work with everybody. India, we have already taken a big step. Now with Mercosur, we have taken a big step. Now with China, we need to figure out what our position is. And Africa. Africa is booming. Africa is growing. Africa will be not in 5 years a big deal, but in 20 years or 30 years. A big topic to be discussed. Number 5, we got to get off this old-fashioned Milton Friedman act of capitalism. This is just utterly sinful that we're still even talking about that. It is just no way that we can just focus on growth and prosperity. There need to be five things. We need to have a new stock market, a pan-European stock market where you get rewarded for doing the right thing, not for doing the worst thing. Right now, the stock market is simply promoting to do the worst things you can imagine. Talk about, Saudi Arabian oil company, Aramco, Meta, anything to do with extracting stuff gets rewarded, right? Anything to do with taking it back gets squashed, right? Very bad idea. United States of Europe, big topic. There is no alternative, right? Pan-European trades, cybersecurity, common defense, common police, also generated by Google Notebook here, but quite cool actually. Taken Back Tomorrow is actually now becoming a kind of working title for me, because this is not going to be given back to us. Right? The United States is using us as a vassal, especially Germany. We're like a fully owned entity. We have to take it back. Take it back means we have to tell them what we're not going to do. And the red lines have been crossed so many times now. It's just not a way for us to stick with this. So here's a list we can discuss. Some of it is quite obvious, but we need a comprehensive European foreign policy. We don't have a foreign policy in Europe. Our foreign policy is to do whatever the United States is saying. And that is so true for Switzerland. Switzerland will do whatever the United States has said in the past, just to stay neutral, just to stay on the side of money, right? That's what it's all about. We have to reduce our dependency on the US dollar. The US dollar is going to hell anyway. It's down to 0.75 Swiss francs now, the worst in 10 years. It's going to go to 50. Mark my words, it's going to go to 50 euro cents if it goes on like this. So US stocks, US platforms, we had to create a new pan-European stock market, pursue zero emission goals, and not drop that. All those terms we've seen here. Most importantly, point number 7, we have to get our act together and drastically reduce everything that's in the way of innovation in Europe. We have to be able to fail. We have to be able to move quickly. We got to keep our scientists here and not have them go to Saudi or China right? And in Denmark, for example, it's really interesting. Denmark makes a great example for this policy. Now you have all these new policies that are coming into place that can create value for people rather than just scaring them away. But bureaucracy, of course, is a deeply European thing, especially German, that we need to fight with, being more entrepreneurial. So the boycott, I think this is clearly going to be a choice. If Trump goes on like it does, and there's no sign that he won't, it's going to be South Africa all over again, and with good reason. That is not a declaration of dislike. I love American people, all my friends over there, but that's something I think that's going to be on the table fairly soon. So Take It Back Tomorrow to me means switching from this simple paradigm of profit and growth to the 5 Ps. And that goes for AI, it goes for policy, it goes for climate change. And that is kind of the recipe for the future. Again, it's not entirely new, but it needs a reboost, a reset for this year. So I think, yes, we can, and yes, we will. That's going to be the year. This is the year that we're going to really do this, and the shit will hit the fan, and we're going to have to stand up and vote for and work for what we really want. Thanks. That's it.
Wow, so much to think about. My notes are covered with questions, but before I ask anything, I want to pass the mic to Liselotte Lingzo, who has been listening in the background. She's a global futurist, founding partner of Future Navigator, and amongst many other things she does, she is host of the Super Trends podcast. Liselotte, give us your feedback and maybe take the conversation further.
First of all, thank you very much, Gerd. As you know, we've been following each other for many years. And as I see it, you have gone from being a futurist to an activist. And you think we have to do it now.
That's a scary message.
And my point of departure is always, trying to keep the future as open as possible, staying curious. So I'm not going to go into the good and bad. As you know, I'm going to go more into the exploration of things. because I think it's key. And to that, I think our goal is the same, but I want to go from servicing people, telling about what is good and bad, to activating them, to really engaging themselves. I see a young generation who are extremely frustrated. You have seen Generation Z going in Madagascar, going all around the place. They feel they can't get into the jobs because AI is taking them. They have Nepo parents helping their kids and they can't get into the housing market themselves. And here, is that a good future or is that a bad future? I don't know, but it's a movement and it's coming globally. Also, I think we might be too focused on the US. As I see the US, it's an unhealthy child being taken over by the Indians and by China. I went to China this summer and they have unmanned factories and they've decided they won't have obesity by 2030. So they put down the alcohol in their beers and remove the candy stores. And they refuse to have the kids watching games for more than 3 hours a week. And they teach everybody AI 6 hours a week, all the teachers to teach the kids to explode creativity. I'm now, as you know, in Africa. And I mean, I think what is really interesting is this change from seeing something and creating something. And there, China has a great advantage that they don't have the bureaucracy that we have in Europe. They don't have a democracy. So they have basically decided ever since Trump got into office the first time, this is the chance for us. So right now they're spreading out a small AI system throughout the world. So here in Kenya, everybody's using Chinese AI. And to be quite honest, I think the Chinese AI is going to win. It's open sourced, so people can code on it, and it's more narrow, so they don't need the same access to chip as the big five in the States do. And it's democratizing, so everybody can enter and create stuff. So I think the only thing with your presentation, Gerd, I'm afraid that it's too Eurocentric. I think we've been living, as colonists, especially in the UK, having their colonies, and even in Denmark with our Greenland, suddenly it dawns upon us that there are other people, there are other ways. And I can see it from the cyber attack that we are experiencing at the moment. It's almost like this Robin Hood. They have the right to steal from us because we've been so bloody rich and blind of our own privileges for a very long time. And suddenly, now there's a new board of peace and we are not invited. It's the bad guys. It's the bad future guys. And for me, it's also maybe a good thing because we have been standing supportive of the US for many, many years. And suddenly we stand there on our own and we create new liaisons with Canada. We've just created new liaisons with South America. And maybe it's about time we get new friends and new ways in the world. And I think the big change now, because you're talking about these democratic countries coming together, we haven't been able to do that in the past because we spoke so many different languages. But actually, AI is solving that now. So, if, for instance, we supported the public, you have the BBC in Denmark, in the UK. If we supported the publics, we could create this social media without the doom scrolling, without the advertisements, but also creating communities of people mirroring into the real world. It's all possible because we can work with Italians, we can work with Germans, and in real time, I'll be deep faked and I'll speak any language you like. So the technology is actually also there's an opportunity to bring us together. And from my point of view, I think it's fantastic that AI is doing some of the knowledge work, and we can see this explosion of creativity. I did this Super Trends podcast on these AI agents, and we were talking about the future of leadership. And in the end, I asked the guests, "So, do you think AI has solved all conflicts by 2050?" And they were like, oh no. And I said, okay, we'll still need people. And so again, there are all these areas that we haven't been ambitious about targeting because we have been so busy, steering the wheel on our cars that we haven't been having the time to look up to talk to each other about creating the future we want. And yeah, I'm really sad to say that I was so proud of creating the Nordic welfare states, but that was created in the 1950s. So for almost 75 years, we have done subtle of new stuff. And so we have been regulating, we have been trying to control the Americans, we've been trying to control China, closing down the whole thing. And maybe now it's time to build lighthouses saying we can do better. It's not very difficult in your bad future to do better, Gerd. So we can actually create these lighthouses where we get the best brains, the most willing people. We can build trust. Trust is disappearing at the moment because we don't know what is real and what is fake. So if we create trustful environments, I'm actually sure we're going to work like a magnet. So trying to create this Eurocores and building a similar defense, I'm not sure this is the way. I really think we should do it as a way of attraction. So that at least is two scenarios. Should we do as an attraction or should we do it in a power game?
If I can reply quickly, I think, first of all, it's important to remember that I use the good future and the bad future only as a vehicle. I certainly don't know what is good or bad in every instance. There's also another word that just was offered to me by Patrick Dixon, one of my fellow futurists, who said, maybe we should talk about the best future. This is, of course, very American. It has to be the best, not just good. But maybe the best future is a good term for saying this is the best that we can have. So, however, I do want to say clearly that fascism and autocrats and racism and all these things are bad, right? And what we're seeing right now, and we have to have the guts to speak out against things that are clearly on an agenda that is not good, okay? And we have to set ourselves apart or say something about it. That's part of what we're seeing from our history in Europe. At a certain point, you have to do something to not be just compliant, okay? And this is going to be really important this year, I think. And maybe this whole thing is a little bit more temporary and not so important, but America has been dysfunctional for a long time, not just since Trump. So when we have autocratic technology that creates people that are worth $4 trillion, they can do whatever they want, and there's only 5 of those, and many of them are controlling the IT systems and defense systems of the world, right? Then that is definitely not good. Okay, and there is things that we need to do about this, and because it's a slippery slope as to what you can live with and talk about how we can, attract them to change and all that stuff. But we also have to remember that we're not talking about really evil people here. We're talking about the attraction of money and power, right? We're not talking about Mussolini type, Hitler type, perpetually evil people here, right? That's not the tech CEOs. They're just doing this because the money is just huge, right? I mean, IPO of $4 trillion? Jesus, that's like what, 10,000 millionaires in San Francisco. So I think these are realistic things that we need to see, and they're not going to change because we're nice.
But Gerd, this is not going to disappear because Trump disappears. Do you agree on that?
No,
Because we have
absolutely.
events and then we have trends, and the underlying trend is coming in any case. So what we have to decide is whether we point fingers or we create something which is more attractive.
The solution is about what do we do, right?
Exactly. Then we agree on that. Yeah.
We cannot change the nature of America. It is dysfunctional, it's broken, it's all these good things and bad things, but we can react differently and we can set out on our own course. Okay, and that is always about collaboration, no matter what. Collaboration is going to be important, right? But also about setting limits and red lines and saying, if you cross that line, I'm not going to be in the same boat with you. It's like a good relationship, you at a certain point you have trouble, you go to the therapist points out a couple of things, and then you start working on it, or you take an exit, right? But
Yeah.
you have to collaborate, right? And if you're not willing to collaborate, then you don't have to go to therapy, because nothing's going to happen, right? So, and I think we are at that point right now where it's really going to come down to this. I'm willing to go to therapy with you, but you're going to want to change, right?
So let's talk about the change. There's a number of really good questions that have been popped in, and I think the question that's been asked the most in two different ways is, how do we move towards this vision of a 5P stock market rather than just profit and prosperity? Conrad Gray asks, what exactly is the plan to make the 5P a reality? What Gerd presented sounds like a great vision with a compelling, optimistic end result, but where do we start? What policies should be prioritized first? Should we be involving perhaps good storytelling, art, and movies as part of what we measure? And along a similar line, but with a slightly different bent, there's a comment from Richard Yonk. So he says he's curious about how we might build a framework or marketplace that rewards the 5Ps, and he thinks that positive economic reinforcement is one of the best tools for long-term change. So could we, if we get it right, use economic pressure to push for the other Ps as well? So how are we going to do this?
There's a stock market in San Francisco called the Long-Term Stock Exchange. They're on this agenda. They haven't really grown very much, but I think this company Asana is on their stock exchange. Okay, the principle is already there in action. If we were to say in Europe, we're going to start a new stock market that's like I call it jokingly the SUSDAC, sustainable NASDAQ. So this is like a NASDAQ, but it's for the new level of companies. So we can go public here and say we're going to incentivize people, planet, purpose, peace, prosperity, and you can't tick all 5 boxes all the time, right? So one day you make a deal that's about money, the next day you make a deal that's about peace, and so on. But this would take it away from this disparity that we have right now, which is a lot of companies like Unilever and others, they want to do good things. But when they start doing it, they get squashed, right? Because it's like, no, you can't do that. Where's my dividend, right? And then if you want to really make money on the stock market, where do you invest? Tell me where you invest, where everybody invests, technology, right? And we are fueling the people who will take our humanity and sell it to somebody else. Okay. The worst outfit, of course, there is Meta, who I stopped doing any speeches for years ago. But this is the general direction. So if the nature of the market is incentivizing bad things, whether it's oil and gas or cigarettes or war or Peter Thiel's company, right? What do they call it again? Yeah. Then if we give them money, they will grow, right? There's a great saying in American Indian history. They say that the wolf you feed is the wolf that wins. Right? We're going to have to start putting our money in other places. And where do you put your money to grow? Right now, there aren't that many choices. If you want to have a good return, you invest in tech, right? Right? We all
But
invest
everything
in tech.
is tech, Gerd. Everything has to be tech. We have to invest in tech as well. Maybe not in
Right.
their tech, but we have to invest in tech. There
Right.
is no way around it. Tech is everything. But what we can do is that we can appeal to, we have a much smaller, younger generation. So the war of talent is on. So I actually heard somebody propose that your 5Ps went into this exclusive LinkedIn. So we kicked off all the companies which were not doing the 5Ps. So you create your own filter bubble as a young person saying, I only want to apply to people at the green LinkedIn, which is applying to the abstaining to the 5Ps. So that is a way of creating your own community, if it's possible. I mean, because again, we want the free markets and we want the rest of it, right?
There's some great examples of how this happens, right? So the World Economic Forum, great example, right? They wanted to design a solution for exactly the same problem, like, I don't know, in the beginning, right? And now the World Economic Forum has become the problem, one of the problems,
Exactly.
right? To give Trump a stage to launch his screwed up peace board, that is just flat out disgusting, And why are they doing it? Well, because, you can't turn down the Don, right?
They had
where
to
that
get him
ends,
to come,
right?
otherwise they knew that they
Right.
were they had
And
ended as
sale,
an organization.
there's other examples like Salesforce. Salesforce is a cool company. Mark Benioff is a great speaker, says many good things. But the other day, guess what their biggest contract is, right? To provide the back end for the Pentagon, right? It's like, okay, we used to think that people that do deals there, and I'm not total pacifist, but this is really worrying me. It's like, okay, so how do we not become part of the problem? And part of that is, for example, here in Switzerland, you cannot take any money from a company to run for one of the 7 presidents that we have here. You cannot take any money, right? And in America, it's all about that. $750 million to become U.S. president. That's the cost, right? And so in Europe, I think we have a model here that we have to lay out and distinguish.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this path will not be easy because we are complacent, we're satisfied.
Yeah, but Gerd, then can we change the democracy? We know that we want to be a part of a democracy. Otherwise, we'll get these dictators in the house. I understand that, but we need to change the democracy as we have it because it's too bureaucratic. Decision making is too long. It's all about the lowest common denominator. So how do we create a different, more energetic, dynamic? Can we learn something from Switzerland? You do a lot of elections about everything, or
I think we can learn a lot more from Denmark than from Switzerland in that regard. I was just there doing a workshop on a gig like the Future Sense. It was super interesting to see what's happening in Denmark. The highest tax rate, I think, more or less in Europe, right? Nevertheless, people are happy, right? It's like on an economic sense, people are like, this doesn't jive, right? And the lowest tax rate in Texas, in the United States, right? People are not that happy, and so there's
So,
an interesting
Lieselotte,
model.
is that fair? Is that an objective assessment of Denmark, or is it a bit naive?
As a futurist, and right now I'm actually working with the government on health, and we have the big issues, for instance, that it's we're spending a lot of money treating people rather than prevention, and we know prevention is a good investment, but we are so myopic. So we have this Maslow's hierarchies of needs, and in the bottom we have AI and Wi-Fi, and we try to do a self-actualization, but we can't see the holistic picture of what the good investment really is. But that is changing thanks to better technology, so we can start traveling into the future. And I actually think that's key for the 5 Ps that Gerd is venturing into. So just to give you a very concrete example, if I have a digital twin, I'm not eating in the morning because I'm telling my 3 children, you should have breakfast, but I can't eat before 12 o'clock because I want to lose 2 kilos and I'm on this fast. And then my digital twin will say, well, actually looking into the future, it's more important that your kids see you eating breakfast and then, keep your 2 kilos, but they need to see you eating in order to eat themselves, and then they'll go to school and they'll learn more. So we will get these technologies that are helping us not to be so myopic, that can actually help us traveling into the future, see how things are connected. So that's my big hope for the many Ps, because right now, yes, we are feeding the wolf, as Gerd said, because we can't do anything else. We're lost in this hamster wheel still, because we can't look beyond. But the moment where we can start to look at several generations ahead, and you can see, well, if you buy something at Shein, it has a huge production cost, it has a huge climate impact. So it might be cheap in your pocket, but the money that you have to pay back in the long run is going to be so much bigger. So it's a bad idea, go to the local grocery and buy some local goods, and you will even support your neighbor's kids, So that kind of equations, we can't do that with the tools that we have right now, but they are coming rapidly. The key here is that we need to own our data. As long as it's the tech giants owning our data, they'll manipulate with us. They will sub-optimize us. But if we can somehow get the data and anonymize it, then David, you can share your data with your trusted ones, but it's going to be your data. So I think that's key.
Well,
a
let's
really
pick up
interesting
the
point.
question of the European tech providers, because Peter Morgan basically said it's not really credible that European tech providers will be good enough. Who are the EU tech providers? And you had a
Well,
list.
that's
Gerd, and I
Mistral,
had to
for
look quite
instance.
closely to see them.
Yeah.
Is it credible that they're going to be doing a good enough job?
Well, then we can have Mistral in France, and then we have Le Pen being elected next time, and then we want to escape from that. As it's so difficult. So I think we should maybe have it more community owned somehow. The old dream of the internet. I don't know what you think, Gerd. Some
Well,
kind of
here's the first thing
bonds.
here's the first really scary thing, right? The internet as we know it is dying because it's becoming AI. So younger people don't use Google anymore, right? They
No,
use
no,
ChatGPT or
of
Gemini, right?
course.
Especially in Africa or anywhere in the world, right? So once you've gotten answers from ChatGPT on your mobile, you don't Google anymore. And so the internet is now 50% already generated by AI. And that means the whole logic of the internet is collapsing. Like I click here and that person gets paid and the advertising and the cookies, all that stuff, right? So that's all that's going away. We're actually reinventing the internet to be not in the browser, but in natural user interfaces, right? But whereas people like Tim Berners-Lee, he's still there, right? Why don't we let him help with that design? Or Vint Cerf, he's still there too, right? Or people with some wisdom that have a common agenda. We need to have a collective agenda with the new internet. If we have
Well,
the agenda of commercial, we're going to make the same mistake again.
P&J picks up this point in the question. What kinds of magnitude of subsidy may be necessary to foster the development of this needed technical infrastructure? And it's all very well having these fine ideas about an internet that belongs to everybody and isn't full up of slop. But what do we need to do to help that? Because the worry is that if European companies do try and catch up with the Americans, they'll just duplicate the same model, and the end result will be just as dehumanizing and diminishing.
Well, this is not a particular technology question, or so. It's all about culture and what I call telos. The destination. What are we looking to get here? I mean, with humanoid robots, are we looking to just not do anything, become like the movie Wall-E? We're just sitting on a cart floating around, right? That's not the goal. The goal is happiness, right? And the goal is human flourishing and progress, real progress, not financial progress. That's why I like Scandinavia, because they have a good definition of an overall progress, and so if we have that goal, then we have to take different action. And part of that action may be a common investment in the process of creating that infrastructure. I would even go as far as saying, I've always said we should have a 2% carbon tax in Europe for every citizen to solve the problem. Maybe we need a future tax. I've already proposed this in Lanzarote, to buy our way out of the problem, to create the infrastructure, or to create a public fund where I can buy shares. For example, there's a great idea actually in the US called not the universal basic income, but universal basic capital. So you're creating a fund where I can buy, right? And then that money is used to create what we need. It's like a public fund, like a sovereign fund, Maybe we should start a sovereign fund for Europe where I can buy shares and we can pay some taxes and create all these things that would need, like a pan-European railroad, pan-European security system, a new stock market. Right? I mean, let's remember one thing. The money is there. The science is there. The tech is there, but not the will. Right? This is our only problem. It's not any of the other things. These are all things that we think are a real problem. It's not about money. We have the money. Right? We had the money with COVID, remember? We didn't think we had the money. So this is an emergency situation. We got to spend the money. And that's the future.
How's that will going to express itself? Does it need leadership? Will it come up decentralized? And on the question of leadership, Gerd, earlier you said Europe lacks leaders of the caliber of people in the past. You mentioned a few, Dag Hammarskjöld, Willy Brandt, perhaps. So do we see signs of emerging European leaders? And what do you think about the suggestion that the best European leader currently is Mark Carney, who happens to be the Prime Minister of Canada.
To be honest, I'm not looking at my generation or something like that to do that. We can be advising. I mean, I can be advising and helping with that, but this is going to come from millennials and younger people, like this Dutch guy who just started the coalition and won the election. I forgot his name. I think it was also Gerd. The Dutch who won the Dutch election. He was actually very much a surprise. Or people like Mamdani in New York. Of course, this is very New York, right? Young people are coming. If they're not going to do it, it's not going to be done. So this is going to be people between 30 and 45 and women, a lot of women and younger people who will take this as their agenda. And we can only contribute and kind of show the way. But it's not going to be done by a 70-year-old white guy, I don't think.
I think, David, if we look at China again, and I'm sorry that I keep promoting this country, but I asked them a lot, how come that you manage to be so entrepreneurial and innovative at the moment? And they said it's because they have their areas. So if we put up the 5 Ps, we're not telling people how to do it. But we are, in a sense, making a squid game. We allow a lot of competition within the area. We allow this biodiversity of competitors. So we say it's like we want to electrify the society. We're not saying which electric car factory should do that or who should do it. And we're doing exactly the opposite in the EU right now. We are weaponizing, and then we're telling, oh, you are making the fregatta and you're making that. And already, I don't have to be a futurist. I just know that we're not going to succeed because we have no competition. We are not looking at who is able. We look at, again, who is sitting with the right network. And sorry to say, Gerd, it's going to be white men again running off with these projects, but they're not necessarily delivering anything of quality or level of innovation and new thinking that we need so badly. So I really think that we should use all the trends that we have. They can be used for good. They can be used for the bad future, but they can also be used for a good future and really challenging how should our democracy look. It's not put in stone, in rocks, but we should invite especially Generation Z into having a voice because they're getting very frustrated all over the place.
Yeah, I think we can see this already kind of taken shape in that the old definition of political fractions, like you say, you're a socialist, a Democrat, a democratic socialist, a communist, a capitalist, and whatever, right? These are all totally useless. Yeah, the only question, I mean, maybe a benevolent autocrat can do certain things much better. For example, to say that there's no more motorbikes unless they're electric. That would be a good rule to make, but you have to be an autocrat to make that rule, right? But there will be benefit to it. So now we're going into a future where all that old stuff, we can't just say, oh, that's a socialist idea, or that's, no, we need ideas that are going to be good for the future. And then we have to test them against that. And this is what we need to do, even if they sound maybe sometimes populist or autocratic or the reverse, communist even, right? So the idea of a universal basic capital or income is deemed to be socialist. I think that's just totally bullshit, right? Because it's gonna solve a problem or not, and we don't really care what the tag is. One thing we do not want is, of course, a model of state capitalism where the benevolent dictator can do good things, like in China. They are doing good things with that, but they can also do completely the opposite. Right, and there's no way to control
I think
them.
the problem with our discussion is as well, we're talking about the good future, but I see this as a moving picture. I see this as an experimentarium. I see it as holding us back if we start categorizing what is good and what is bad. But we have to have some guiding principle or ethics. And then we are also going to make mistakes and being the part of the evil stuff along the way, for sure. We cannot do this in the purest of ways, but we have to experiment, and we have to knowledge share a lot more, and we have to be making a population of creators. And here I must say we're not that good in the Scandinavian countries. half of us are working for the public sector, which is why we like the taxes, it gives you money back in the pocket. But really, we lose all the companies as soon as they get to a certain size. They go to Silicon Valley, of course, because that's where the money is. So how do we make sure that we keep that experimentarium more decentralized in different countries, creating that kind of biodiversity of ideas that I think we need, because we need to find a new way, and we don't have it. It's not clear at all how it should look.
Well, the idea of an experimentarium sounds great, but unless there's a large market, it's very hard for small companies to scale up. Gerd was saying earlier, we really must make the United
We have
States of Europe.
Europe, we have Canada, we have Australia, New Zealand,
But it's not a
the
unified
UK.
market in many ways. There's often very different regulations, even in different countries, despite the unified EU single market. It's not actually a single market. Is it credible
No.
that we'll have better experiments moving more quickly if there is more uniformity? Or should we value the diversity of the different European countries and indeed even the States?
Well, there is a model, of course, in the United States that is doing that pretty much, right? So the states are independent. They can do lots of different things, but they come together for the larger stories. And that is the United States of America. But if we have the United States of Europe, we can have a very similar model. We keep our languages, our culture, all of this, but we speak English with each other. And we put the money into a common pot for cybersecurity and of course the military now, which is already happening, right? So we can come closer, but keep our identity. I mean, if you go to New Orleans, it's different than when you go to Dallas, Texas, and these things stay. And they're not losses, But my friend Bill Halal, who is also on this call, I think, who wrote a great book called about global consciousness and beyond knowledge. We are moving to a world where global consciousness is needed to solve these problems, right? And that will be a benefit to all of us if we can kick that off in Europe and then enlarge so that it becomes kind of what has been called the Star Trek society, where things are solved together. But we will not do that if the only incentive is about power and money. Right? And I see in my own life, when I was 35, I was looking at power and money, and that kind of petered out a little bit later, and now I make decisions that are not based on just power and money, right? Like we all do when we get older, right? And we need to make that shift, because right now it's power and money all over again. And we will see in countries where those are the rulers, like the German AfD that wants to go in that direction, none of that will turn out to have any positive effect. Whether it's Turkey or Hungary or Germany with the AfD or Trump, or none of that will have a good effect on the people that vote for it.
Let's pick a question from Tony Zarneski, who is very sympathetic to what you're suggesting, Gerd. He actually says that in 2019 he wrote a book, Democracy for Human Federation, and suggested it the best channel for a civilizational transition to flourishing with technology would be what he called an extended EU with about 60 members. And Tony points out that about 2 years ago, something called the European Political Community was formed, which is much larger than the EU. He says there's 46 countries. Is that something you've heard of? Are you a champion of that?
Yes, well, I tend to be more realistic living in Switzerland, where we have this debate every single day about whether we're Europeans or not, I mean, I'm from Germany. I was born, but I have a Swiss passport now too. But so I have this dual head, and the Swiss people keep telling me they want all the benefits, but none of the duties, this is a cultural question, right? We have to remember that these are all cultural, human issues, They're not issues really about practical things, so they're all the way down here. So I think to take a gradual approach and bringing us closer together would involve countries in Europe that are dedicated to that. And I think the new leadership will not be in Germany; it will be in Spain and Portugal, because they are the ones who are currently kicking ass there, right? And it's the North and the South: Germany, Switzerland, Austria, France. Yeah. We know where that's coming from, and this is why I've been looking forward to maybe the moment where the UK goes back on this effort of not being part of Europe, which is ludicrous, right? Obviously, because especially now, the real problem is approaching us from the West and the East. Right? So this is forcing us to make a decision. So I think that eventually I see Canada as a strong component of that Europe, especially now with that situation. Potentially a new Russia may emerge with some painful things in the next few years. One can only hope, but there's a total wild card. Who knows? Turkey.
Well, before we started, we were talking about fantastic people living in Iran with literature, their whole history, and who knows? They will come back.
This is very difficult to understand. I mean, I've been to Russia many times. I still don't understand. The same goes for China, really. I don't really understand that. But we have the rise of all this global consciousness, and younger people are global citizens already by default, right? And they're not going to be okay with some stupid tariffs and sanctions against things that we could collaboratively work out, right? And that is only a holdback from 50 years ago, from Milton Friedman and all power politics.
One obstacle to people becoming more identified and enthusiastic about Europe, one obstacle to the UK rejoining the EU, is something you described in your talk, Gerd. You talked about the problem of the EU is complacency, laziness, and bureaucracy. So how is that going to disappear? Just because there is the challenge of, gosh, the Americans are going their own way and we can't trust the Chinese. How can we get rid of that perception or the reality of complacency, laziness, and bureaucracy?
Yeah, we go back to therapy.
It actually happened during COVID, if I can just interrupt, sorry.
Yeah.
But during COVID, we had a huge crisis and all bureaucracy, all scheduled meetings were dropped and people just went in the front line and they fixed the problem, basically. So I think if the crisis get bad enough, unfortunately, we will actually get our act together.
Well, look, it's really like this, Europe is getting divorced with America, okay? And when you get divorced, you have issues, and then you have the next partner. When you go to therapy, okay, you realize at a certain point, like, I go back to therapy, right? Then you realize, I'm just a lazy fuck. And if I don't change that, it's not going to work, right? And here we are in Europe, and we're looking at each other and saying, "Oh my God, are you just completely saturated and boring, right?" And this is the moment that we're looking at each other saying, "Oh, the Americans, they're really exciting, right? And they're doing all this great, yeah." And now we have to do it ourselves, right? And this is kind of where we are now. And so it's forcing us to say, what do we prefer? Do we prefer the sort of engineering society that Germany has built up, or do we prefer a creative society? That has been primarily Anglo, from the Beatles to Silicon Valley, and now we're here. And this is why I think the UK is an integral part of this, because we can bring that together there, just like Canada is a big part of that, where you have this North American view of life. And having lived there for 20 years, I know it's a way of life, and so the way of life in the European headquarters and in Brussels is this way of looking at shipping through all the different requirements and nailing it all down. It's not creativity. It's like running through obstacles. And however, having said that, we do have good leadership, and it's not surprising that they are primarily women in the European Commission who are doing all the good works. You can say what you want about van der Leyen and people like that, but I think doing better than most men have ever done in the same position. So I see hope there, but what's there say? I think it was Warren Buffett who said.
I think.
Yeah. One more thing about Warren Buffett, and then you can take over. So he said, "Show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome." Okay, that's Warren Buffett. If the incentive is we're going to build a united Europe, we're going to build a new life there, right? That is the best future, right? Then the outcome, if that's the incentive, we'll have the outcome.
And I can't help thinking that artists are going to have a big role in designing this new future for us as well. As you say, AI is calculating a lot of the stuff. The engineering is being taken care of, but it's the creativity, it's all the stuff which hasn't yet been there. So we need some solar punk, not only black mirrors to scare us, but actually some interesting scenarios that we can see ourselves in. And there you need the artist to put everything together. It's not one element or another. It's really combining it. And to be honest, I've been always very afraid of this universal basic income, because I think what is key to human happiness is friction. It should be difficult. It should be having a purpose. You need to create something. You don't want to just sit in the sofa and having a paycheck in every month. I mean, that's not what is making us thrive. So how do you create communities that are creating something that is circular? The more active they are, the better the planet gets. So how do you create this sort of movement?
Yeah, I think it's a universal basic capital is a much better idea because it's a fuel for action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And currently, this is kind of what VCs do in America, right? But we could have that here. And the money is there. You know, we're spending the money on all kinds of things that don't work, right? So I think this is something to think about also, to combine all the strengths of Europe. You know, Germans have certain strengths, and the Spanish people are more sort of questioning and are more passionate about things, right? And in the North, we have this kind of really interesting way of life balance, right? So we could throw that all together. I think we have a great cocktail.
Let me tie a couple of things together with a comment by Margaret Hardy. What we've said is that the real problem isn't one of technology. It's not even one of culture. It's one of will. You know, are we prepared to stand up and do something? And the suggestion a moment ago was, if a crisis is perceived to be bad enough, we can do remarkable things. We can discover a willpower we didn't know existed. We can build bridges much more quickly in wartime than could ever be done in peace and so forth. But Margaret says, the problem is not complacency or laziness. It's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When we are hungry and forced to fight for our basic existence every day, we have little head time for things that don't contribute to solving our immediate problems. That's why, she says, people acquiesce to politics of low ambition and fail for economic scaremongering. Is that fair? Would you agree with that?
I
Or
mean,
is
you
that
have
excuses?
science. First of all, I'd say thank you, Margaret, for a lot of interesting comments and links in your chat. I'm looking very much forward to do the reading afterwards. Thank you for that. And also, there's been scientific studies showing that your IQ changes with 20. You know, the average is 100, and you go 20 below in a situation of poverty. So I'm completely online with that. And then you have the material poverty, but we're also having a different poverty, which is our intellectual poverty, as we are spending too much time on noise. So I want to say that to our listeners as well. You have to differ between what is actually noise and what is transformation. And once you've heard the message from Trump once, you know, don't stay online and listen to it for the 100th time. You know, say, I heard it. Now I'm going to spend my IQ on something which will transform the world for the better, or look at trends that will transform the world for the better. And I would love to train a lot of people in doing that, because we are drowning right now. And then, of course, we don't have time, if we are drowning, to lift our heads and look into the horizon. So thank you for that remark, Margaret. I think it's very relevant.
Well, and of course, sorry, of course, we have to realize we are at this point, we are heading towards multiple crises. And there's no shortage of incentive from these crises. You know, it's like this year the shit is hitting the fan. Okay, like literally, there's very likely to be a civil war or revolution in the United States, which will send the global dollar spinning to half, and the stock market's crashing, unless there's some sort of other way around this. But okay, it's quite likely. AI is going to keep unfolding its enormous power, and there's very little chance to control it with the current situation. So that also, I mean, it's like one emergency button after the other. And this will say, okay, never mind all of this bullshit about whether you're a socialist or not. Now it's going to be about solutions. Like Mamdani in New York, it's not going to be about him being a socialist Democrat. It's going to be about solutions and what he actually does. Right? And I think that the same thing is going to happen here in Europe. So we're going to say, now, never mind all of that, because now we have urgent things to do. Right?
But isn't there a problem here? When people are experiencing poverty, what do they want? They want an economic boost. They're going to say, oh, hurry up and use AI to boost the economy. Let's not worry about all these other things. And also, when they're feeling in a state of crisis, they're more prone to latch on to false solutions, to populist solutions, to slogans, to blaming other people. So just because there's a crisis doesn't mean necessarily we're going to find a good solution.
There has to also be trust in the alternative, in leadership, right? So we have a crisis, and then we don't have an idiot coming up and promising a solution by kicking out all the foreigners, and that's the solution, right? But we have somebody who is trustworthy altogether, like Mark Carney is kind of becoming trustworthy in that kind of way, or Rob, Rob Jenkins, the Dutch guy. We have people like that who need to come up and become a symbol for what is possible. Because if you have pressure but no trust, then you have extremism, right?
I think that's the most important word in the whole discussion, the T word, the trust word. This is one of the changes you talked about at the beginning. We must stop just regarding everything as transactional. What can we get away with? Can we cheat? Yes. If so, let's cheat. And if people find us out afterwards, well, we've had a benefit. And surely we must find a way to raise the importance of trust in all that we do. But that sounds like a naive, that sounds Pollyannish. How can we actually put trust to the fore rather than see the powerful and the strong man and technology for the sake of technology winning?
Rutger Bregman has a good book on this called Humankind.
Yeah.
Okay, read the book, then you understand that humans aren't evil by nature. They can be very evil. Yeah, please.
I'll give you a personal example. Last Christmas, I was in Chile, and a guy came up to me and he tried stealing my phone and my bag. And it was a very nasty situation. And after that, I looked at everybody like they were thieves. I felt horrible. And what I did was I went to a cafe. I put my backpack out on a chair with my passport, my money, everything. I left my bag. I went to the bathroom for half an hour looking at my watch. And I sat there, and after half an hour, I went out and my bag was there. And I said, yes, I can trust the world. I can trust people. I had to do it because I started, as you know, you only see 10%. And if those 10% are the mistrust and then you ruin your own life. So I really decided to do that. And it helped. It created a fantastic further journey because fundamentally, I think trust is a principle. It's something that you have to decide. It's not coming by itself.
Yeah, that's a great saying. I forgot to say it originally, but I always say your mindset contains your future. Right? If your mindset is negative, you're expecting hate to come towards you, bad things. This is what you attract. Okay, the reverse isn't entirely true because you can have a good mindset and still have bad things, clearly. But there's a guarantee that if your mindset is negative, you will attract negative things. Okay, this is just the way that it works between us. So this is super important, I think, for us to say that there are borders that have been crossed, but we have to have a good attitude as to what is possible.
And that was why when we ended this discussion, I was like, I hope we spend more time on creating the future rather than pointing fingers at the bad one, because it's rolling us over, but we have been spending a lot of time looking at it the last few years. So important that we move away and look at the lights and what we want to create, especially for the next generation. I don't want to be a parent to a whole generation that said, you left us no future. It would be so sad.
Yeah, and the hopelessness that we see with young people now is like this. Every time we have a discussion, it's like they don't know what to do. It's like seems also hopeless not having kids, and we have to fix this urgently because they are the ones who are going to have to pick this up.
Exactly.
On the childbirth question, Eva Pasco pointed out that it seems that the fertility rate in Europe is lower than it is in America. Swiss is the lowest, she says, at 1.3. US is still at 1.6 and edging higher. Is that another way in which Europe might become submerged under the dominance of America? Is that something we need to worry about?
Maybe, but it's. I mean, if you look at Africa, the birth rate is still phenomenally high and increasing. There's already prognosis saying that there will be about 50% of the world will be African in 30, 40 years. I think it's a general outlook on life that makes us more compliant and not taking a risk by having kids. And when you talk about America, you have to keep in mind that we're talking about the things on the side, the oceans, and in the middle, people still have lots of kids, right? So, and this is, of course, an interesting scenario because many people say that, we need AI to fill the jobs that humans can't do because they won't be there, right? And that's also probably a good component about AI. Maybe many jobs that are manual or commodity, maybe the AI will do it and it won't even matter because we won't have enough people. So there's another component to that. But I think, generally speaking, it's about hope and trust and vision, where people feel like, count me in, I'm part of this. And so I'm going to be willing to take a risk, rather than entrench or go back to the past, as
Well,
we
let's
have in
talk
Germany.
more about trust, because we're agreeing that trust is so important. And I underscore your recommendation or commendation for Rutger Bregman. His book, Humankind, is remarkable. And his more recent book, arguably even more remarkable, that's Moral Ambition. Both of them point out that in the right circumstances, humans, even humans who are deprived, humans who are suffering, humans who have every reason to complain and feel vengeful, they can do remarkable things. And these are the stories we need to have more in our mind rather than being told by populists that we are weak and we need a strong man to solve things for us. So I get behind all of that. But there's a couple of comments by Terence Raby. He says that when people see that there's no equality before the law, if it seems that there's one track of law for the rich and powerful and everybody else has got a different track of law, that is a real disincentive for trust. And Terry Raby also raises the observation that many of the global organizations seem to have a bad reputation for trust. The UN and WHO, both of them seem to have bad attitudes towards objectivity and truth. He says they are captured sometimes by wokery. That's his term. I prefer the term social justice fundamentalism, which insists on seeing everything through the viewpoint of potentially submerged institutional racism or institutional sexism. So despite our hope for having more trust, there are a lot of obstacles to that. So are you optimistic that the UN and WHO can reform and be part of the good future? Or do we need to build something different from a new foundations?
Okay.
Sorry, dump a hard question on you.
I think the UN is at the point to where it needs to be completely reformed and rebooted. Everybody knows that. And the new Secretary General that's coming in, I hear it's going to be a woman from South America. There's good chances for that. If the UN does not re-engineer its own existence and meaningfulness, it will do the opposite of what Dag Hammarskjöld said when it was founded, which is it wasn't founded to make heaven, but to prevent hell. In that role has been kept for a while, but it has greatly been diminished. And people are chipping away from the World Economic Forum to the Trump Peace Board, chipping away at the meaningfulness. And we need a body like this. It needs to be a revamped, completely rebooted UN, refinanced UN, or it needs to be something else. I think the idea of global consciousness and all the things that we talk about are very much UN, right? But how do we make it alive again? It's like, is that possible? I don't know. I keep doing what I can for the UN or with the UN to make that happen. But here's one thing about trust, right? Trust isn't something that's done digitally. Trust is a physical thing. It's an emotion, right? How do we build trust? Well, usually by meeting each other and looking at each other, and it will take 3.1 seconds to figure out if I can trust you. and it's not something that's factual or scientific or algorithm, right? It's a humor rhythm, what I call an androrhythm, right? It's like, when I go see somebody and I have to take a taxi with a stranger or so, then there's a vibe, whether there's trust there in some sort, or and this is what makes us human. And if we have to keep that physical contact also, that's really important, and not shrink back into virtuality, or, using chatbots to write messages for us, that know nothing about trust or any of these things, right? So now we're kind of substituting our human world with a machine world because it's faster and cheaper, and that won't work.
But your chatbot will never let you down, Gerd. It will always please you and protect you and support you. At least that's what it says.
Yeah,
But I completely agree with you. It's a challenge, and we see that up against 90% is going to be of all communication is with chatbots, and we're reaching that by 2030. We call it, or I call it, feedback fitness. So in the old days, you had to go to the fitness center to train your physical muscles, but now we have to meet in order to train our feedback fitness. And it's in order to hear what we don't know, we can't live without. Because our chatbots are going to tell us all the stuff we thought. Oh, I thought I was going to save 2 kilos, not eating breakfast, but we didn't know that it had to do with our children going to school and having their breakfast. And that the chatbot is never going to get us. So we have to have this feedback fitness where somebody is telling us, tapping on our shoulders, Lisa, you're walking down that way, but really look in the complete opposite direction, because that is a rabbit hole. And I've been working with ENISA in the European Commission, and they predict that the future of war is going to be civil wars, because it's so cheap now to let people attack one another because we are otherwise present. And you have a point there in the EU. If we don't have kids, and it's not because we don't want children, it's because people are not living as couples any longer. They live as singles. So they have a feedback crisis like never before. So we are very easy target. Because we simply don't know what's right and wrong, and our main contact is via screens.
In the last 5
And that
minutes,
goes for our kids as well.
Yeah.
In the last 5 minutes, let's try and push in 2 more questions. One is, are we really sure we understand what the cause of the problem is here? For example, there's an anonymous attendee who says, Trump didn't make America, America made Trump. Do we really
I agree
understand
with
why
that.
America produced Trump? And how can we avoid something similar happening here? That is also raised by Jyoti Kiera, who says, well, we might boycott the US now, but what's going to prevent the same things happening here? There is issues she's concerned about in India. If we're not careful, people will be, she suggests, brainwashed or led astray by simple, naive, appealing solutions rather than deeply understanding what the cause of the problem. So have you got to the bottom of what the problem is?
That's what I started out saying. We have trends and we have events. Trump is an event, but we have an underlying trend also promoting extreme right parties all around Europe. And I know you saw all the tech giants sit around the table saying yes, yes, yes to Trump, being subordinated. But I'm in no doubt that they are the real kingmakers in society right now. And that goes for the whole globe, as they are everywhere. So they are the movers and shakers, and they have no democratic legacy whatsoever. And they can get people. We're living in that. Another great book that you have to read is Techno-Feudalism, because I think that says everything.
Yeah.
We are living and working in a techno-feudal society where we have to pay to the tech masters, and if they don't like us, we die. We get obliterated. So it's like
That's
in the
by
old
Yanis
feudal
Varoufakis,
society.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's the end of capitalism because they don't even need to earn money. So profits is out. It's just a completely different rule book. And we haven't really gotten to understand it properly and the impact on us. So I guess we need a French Revolution or something, Gerd.
Well, I think part of the problem is that we have these issues is that technology was supposed to connect us more and come together more, but it has actually disconnected us. Because when we are connected, we can't easily pull off the lies and the distortion and the, without feeling ashamed, when we are connected, because we have feedback, we have a community that flags all of these things, right? And let's be sure in the sickness of what Trump is dishing up around the world is the sickness of America that has been there for a long time. I mean, these things aren't new. They're just the pinnacle of the sickness, And so this is why I say the dysfunctionality of America, is clear, plain to see. And can we change that? I don't know. Maybe they can change it. Maybe something will. As Americans are very good at flipping, and just making up something new, it could happen, right? But for us, it means we can't partake in that sickness. Okay, we need to create a future that it works for us, and not by pointing a finger, by saying that's not what we want here. We're humanists in Europe, for crying out loud, right? We want human benefit. We don't want stock market benefit or AI benefit, right? And that is not. Of course, there are lots of humanists in the U.S. as well. But okay, so this is our goal, I think, and yes, do we really know? I mean, I think we're at the very beginning of this process, and I can tell you one thing: it's going to be painful, just like therapy. You're going to go there, you're going to cry, you're going to freak out, you're going to throw stuff at each other, and then you find a door to something new. And
good stuff. Your wife is a therapist, Gerd.
Also, yes, but I've been to quite a bit of therapy with my kids and stuff. So anyway, this process, it's painful. And that is happening right now. And there's no way around that. We don't make the effort, we don't have the pain, we're not going to see the results. That's what it is.
No pain, no gain.
So the last question, which I'm going to ask you to answer in a moment after I've just done a quick announcement to the audience. The last question is going to be, what of all the things we talked about, what are the most important changes that each of us should be considering? Not just wishing that somebody else might make a change, but what should each of us be doing? And whilst you're thinking of the answer to that, I would like just to take a moment to run through a couple of things that are coming up next in the London Futurist world. I'll turn off my video briefly and I'll put this window away. So if you liked what was discussed today, you may wish to come back in a week's time when we'll have three other panelists, futurists Bruce Lloyd, Peter Scott, and Alexandra Whittington, talking about their experiences of using AIs, not to end up in inauthentic and confusing state, but with more wisdom. So they're going to be recommending how AI can be used wisely in education, at schools, but education for all of us. That's in exactly 1 week's time. If that's too long for you to wait, there will be something happening sooner, which is on Wednesday, another online event, this time in the London Futurist Discord. We call it a swarm meeting. That is going to be discussing an essay that came out a few days ago by Dario Amodei, the CEO and founder or co-founder of Anthropic. He's written a quite mind-stretching essay called The Adolescence of Technology, in which he talks a lot about risks, but he says, hey, if we do these things, we can get beyond our adolescence into a much better future. So that is in the Discord, which you can find links to online. One of the things in the Discord is this marvelous AI-produced picture of some of the ideas in the talk, in the essay by Dario Amodei. So there's no speaker there. It's just people who have read the essay will be offering their thoughts as to which parts we like and which parts we feel are a little bit perhaps too glib or a little bit too reckless. Moving forwards, this is not a London Futurist event, but many friends of London Futurist are organising this at the International Centre for Sustainability in London. It's a physical meeting on, again, how can technology be used to improve how we collaborate? In particular, how can it improve our deliberative democracy and our shared democracy? So that's you need to register for. And if you're looking for the link to register, you'll get it in the latest newsletter. And if you haven't got the newsletter to hand, you can find it on the London Futurist site in the newsletter tab. Moving further ahead, we have another session with Matt O'Neill, who I see is in the audience today, in which we're going to ask, right, we're giving away a lot of things to AI. What should we be not giving away? And perhaps trustworthiness is one of them. Judgment is another. So that is an online meeting. Again, you'll find the links to it in the newsletter. There's a meetup page for it as well. And that will send you to LinkedIn where you can register for that discussion. And I think last on this list is another real world meeting. This is in a pub in Fleet Street. It goes back to, I think, the 1500s. This is an AI modified picture of the room where we often meet in that pub. And since it's going to be Friday the 13th, we thought we'd look at possible freaky futures and fabulous futures. What if AI and technology magnifies the demonic aspects of our nature rather than the angelic aspects? Which of these freaky or fabulous futures are credible enough that we should be thinking about them? And what should we be doing as a result? So let me turn back on my video, stop sharing my screen. And at this stage, I will ask the $64 trillion question to both Gerd and Lieselotte. What is the most important thing each of us should be doing differently beyond simply complaining about the past?
Should I start?
Yeah, you start. You start. Good idea.
I think I think it's really a good idea to avoid the noise and go for the transformation. Note it down, collect it, and get some feedback fitness out there with people. And if you can, get out of your country, listen to other perspective, be curious about this. Don't think that you can make your mind up from home. You have to really go and listen louder to what people are saying, and I think we have to be much more humble, especially coming from Europe, coming from rich countries, that it's time now for Africans, the African states and the Indians. They are also getting AI in their hand, and some of them have been very hungry. They haven't been able to learn. They haven't been able to educate, and suddenly they see a little piece of light. And I think we should cherish that so that we can create a much bigger great playground for all. So look for these transformations and be curious as to that we want to create a planet where everybody can thrive.
Okay.
Wonderful advice. Gerd.
I have two things. First, like I said earlier, our mindset contains our future. So let's make sure our mindset is positive, open, justifiable, accountable, fair, international, global. That's already a big job right there. And the other one is that I think we need to really invest in the good future, or invest in what I now call the best future. So investing in that means my own skills, my own learning, all these things, but also investing, putting the money in the right places, helping other people to make that happen, to put out stuff that promotes this. Because I think one of the key challenges we have is that the narrative is missing about why it's going to be good and how it's going to be good. So the narrative is very negative. And I hope that today was a way out of that narrative towards a good future narrative. I've been working on this campaign. I call it like, I love New York, from the 80s. And I would love to start a campaign called I Love the Future.
Yay.
That would be the complete antidote to the shit that we see today. It's like, I hate the future because it's bad, right? So anyway, so I love the future. I think this would be a good rallying cry also for the younger generations to get up their hope as why the future is exciting and good.
I love the future. Take back tomorrow. And as Margaret Hardy says in the chat, revolution can happen one choice at a time. So let's make some choices to find out more, to move beyond our comfort zone of our current experiences. If we can't easily travel to other countries, then please come to London Futurists, where you will see speakers from multiple countries stretching your mind. So I want to thank Lieselotte and Gerd very much for tackling this big, big topic. And this is not the last you're going to hear of it. I think the phrase take back tomorrow is going to be heard more and more often. And it's up to us to build out that narrative so that it is more convincing, more credible, and people don't say, oh, this is too weird. Europe can never do anything. Europe is too bureaucratic. Europe is too bothered with small organizations. Instead, we can flesh that out. And so people will say, yes, this is a better future. And perhaps we'll even get the United States of America joining the EU at some stage in the future. Who knows? So thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.